What if hiring could be easier, more streamlined, and less time-consuming, so even when you're busy, you could still be smart about the way you hire? With ZipRecruiter, you can post your job to over 100 of the web's leading job boards with just one click, so you can rest easy knowing your job is being seen by the right candidates. Then, ZipRecruiter puts its smart matching technology to work, actively notifying qualified candidates about your job within minutes of posting so you receive the best possible matches. That's why ZipRecruiter is different. Unlike other hiring sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on the right candidates finding you, it finds them. And it's no wonder 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. ZipRecruiter, it's the smartest way to hire. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by growing businesses of all sizes and industries to find the most qualified job candidates with immediate results. And right now, my listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That is right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/M&M. That's ZipRecruiter.com/M&M. One more time to try it for free. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/M&M.
Hello, the Internet. It's Jack O'Brien, the founder and former editor-in-chief of Crack.com and the host of the new comedic news podcast, The Daily Zeitgeist, which, as the name suggests, is daily and sporadically in German. If you like Cracked, How Stuff Works podcasts and want to get your news from some of the smartest and funniest comedic and journalistic minds around, well then, this show is going to make you all over the place.
Yeah, I don't think we can use that.
Sure we can. Go to Apple Podcasts to listen and subscribe.
This is the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast.
Glad you are with us on this Wednesday morning on Golic and Wingo, whether it's on ESPN Radio or ESPN2 or on the ESPN app. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests will join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, and John Gruden will join us. John, I don't know how much of that conversation you heard, but it is sort of an interesting discussion with Devin Hester. Look, obviously he didn't do things around the return game as much as other people have, but he has more of those kind of scores than anybody in NFL history. In your mind, have you thought about the idea of maybe we have just someone who's specifically a returner of the football be eligible for the Hall of Fame?
Why not? I mean, that's the way the world's going. We're making exceptions for just about everything these days. I think there is a place for Devin Hester to be enshrined in the Hall of Fame, so people do remember his accomplishments. But I think the criteria at the Hall of Fame is a little bit different. I think you have to play a certain amount of snaps. I think it's for the every down players. In some ways, maybe it does discriminate against punters and kickers and returners and coverage people. But perhaps there will be a special place for Devin Hester. I know there should be. I would imagine there are some markings in the Hall of Fame of him already without him having to be enshrined.
And maybe something that won't help his cause so much is punt returns 11.7 for a career that's tied for 8th. Kickoff returns at 25 yards per is tied for 67th. Now, the people ahead of him, had they done it less, we could break that down a little more. But an interesting thing, either way, Devin Hester retiring from football with the most non-offensive touchdowns in NFL history. All right, John, what in the wide world of sports happened to the Patriots last Monday?
I'm surprised you asked that, Mike. You know, we all know it's kryptonite when New England goes to Miami, South Florida. They haven't traditionally been as dominant on the road in Miami for whatever reason, whether it's the hotel or the sleep service. I don't know what it is, but they got manhandled. You go 0 for 11 on third down, you're not going to win the game. They lose the turnover battle, which they never do. Mike, they're missing a lot of great players. If you just pull up their defense, their world championship defense from a year ago, and then look at the 11 men that played on defense against the Miami Dolphins, and you'll see they're up against a real difficult opponent this week in Pittsburgh. I don't know how they're getting as many stops as they are. I don't know how this defense over 8 weeks was giving up 12 points a game. They're missing a lot of firepower on defense. Rob Gronkowski not playing is a huge deal. I saw him struggle without Gronkowski on the road at Tampa earlier, and they weren't the same team in Miami without Gronk either. And they're missing Marcus Cannon, their right tackle. Mm-hmm. They're missing a lot of Patriots, and for that reason, they have struggled a little bit the last few weeks.
Yeah, it's interesting, John. The last two games, even though they won pretty convincingly in Buffalo, the offense also seemed a little sluggish. It was the defense that sort of carried them through that game as they got after Tyrod Taylor, and he had to leave that game, and obviously they were limited when Nathan Peterman came in. But you look at the last two games, Brady has thrown 3 interceptions and 1 touchdown. Is it something that you're seeing in Brady, or the players that are around him that aren't there is a bigger concern for you?
Well, the latter part of that is a bigger concern for me. I'm not concerned about Brady whatsoever. You know, you lose Gronkowski, that's one thing. Remember, they're missing Julian Edelman, who led their team in receptions a year ago. They're missing LeGarrette Blount, who had 18 rushing touchdowns, a franchise record. They're missing their right tackle, and they're missing most of their defense. I think they're going to continue to have to win some games unpatriot-like. They might have to win a couple ugly games like you're talking about against Buffalo on the road. But Tom Brady is still a great quarterback. I don't have any reservations about that. I've studied him enough. But they do need to find other ways, other players to get involved. And I think Josh McDaniels done a great job. They just did not have a good night against the Dolphins.
Is there just a point, John, and because you have Tom Brady, they always get the benefit of the doubt. It's just like with Aaron Rodgers is on the field. Oh, well, they have Aaron Rodgers, so they have a chance. But at some point, do you just say, and maybe do we think the Patriots might be there even though they only have 3 losses? But we're talking about a Super Bowl championship or bust for them, that sometimes there's just too much to overcome with lack of talent on the field, maybe because of injury or whatever other reason?
Yeah, I think that's the case, Mike. I mean, for us to think Tom Brady's lost it, I hear people saying Tom Brady's lost it. He's 40. He's over the hill. He had 3,700 yards and 26 touchdowns and 4 picks. He was ripping the league up. He was the MVP candidate, number 1 overall, if you ask me, on tape. He has a bad night without Gronkowski, and they're missing too many guys from last year's team right now. Hopefully Trey Flowers, Kyle Van Noy, Marcus Cannon, Rob Gronkowski. Those are 4 big-time players now. Hopefully they come back and suit it up on the road against Pittsburgh, and that'll make things very interesting.
Yeah, John Gruden with us here on Golic and Wingo. To that point, when the Patriots lost in the AFC Championship game to Denver that year, and the Broncos and Panthers made it to the Super Bowl, I think combined that year, the Broncos and Panthers had 17 players on injured reserve, and the Patriots had something like 21. So health is always going to play a part in this. But we now have, John, what could be an epic showdown Sunday in Pittsburgh with the Steelers getting Juju Smith-Schuster back after scoring 39 points and Ben passing for 500 yards without him. And now you get Gronkowski back for Tom Brady. Look, the question then becomes for this game, because of the Steelers' issues on defense and some of the things you alluded to with the Patriots and their holes on defense right now, and whether or not some of those players will be back, is this game going to come down to who, for what could be, by the way, home field advantage in the AFC, essentially whoever has the ball last?
Yeah, possibly. It sounds like a shootout to me. When you look at the Steeler defense, they're missing, obviously, Ryan Shazier, and you can't underestimate how great he was. He was a every down performer. He was good against the run and pass, and he could chase down plays and make help prevent a long run. They're also missing Joe Hayden. I don't know if Hayden's going to be back. He's their best cornerback. And Mike Mitchell's been up and down with injuries at safety. Those are 3 key Pittsburgh Steelers. And, like I say, it's going to be a shootout. I do believe that. The Patriots are depleted on defense, but you have Ben Roethlisberger, Tom Brady, with all the chips on the table. You can't miss this game. I just got to say this. The winning edge to me for the Pittsburgh Steelers is their offensive line. I think if you really look deep from left tackle to right tackle, led by Mike Munchak, their great offensive line coach, I think the Steelers win it because of their overall dominance up front on the offensive line.
I'm Monday Night Football analyst John Gruden joining us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Of course, coach winning a Super Bowl with Tampa Bay has them this Monday, the Falcons at Tampa Bay. Another big game is going to be the Carolina Panthers, who are sitting in a wild card spot right now against visiting Green Bay Packers, who are on the outside looking in, kind of a long shot to make the playoffs, but still have a chance. And here you are, John. I know we've asked you, and I've asked other coaches before as well, how you treat a injured player coming back, and in this case, Aaron Rodgers. So he's cleared medically to go. Is that all you need to hear as a head coach if you're kind of still in the playoffs? How do you decide how you want to use Aaron Rodgers, or is it clearly just if the medical staff says he goes, he goes?
Well, you have to ask, obviously, the doctors if that's the case. And if it is the case, you go right to Aaron Rodgers and ask him what he feels. You know, how prepared are you? How do you feel about going out here after missing a lengthy period of time? Bad weather games, big games on the road, etc. Have a great conversation with him. And also, you got to take a good look at how he's looked on the practice field. All I've heard is raving reviews of him throwing the ball on the practice field with his teammates. The electricity goes way up when number 12 walks in the building and is a green light go. But I'm going to go with Aaron Rodgers. If the doctors say so and A-Rod says, hey, I want to play, I say let's go play and make the playoffs. Even if we have to back in like we did last year, they went all the way to the NFC Championship by rallying late, and they got to have Rodgers.
Trey and I completely agree with that, playing him right now. Now let me add one question to that. Let's do what we do. This is what we sit here and we look ahead.
We project, John.
And now we say Aaron Rodgers plays, goes to Carolina, but they lose that game. So now basically they're out of the playoffs. They're not going to make the playoffs now. Is there any thought in your mind as a coach to say, okay, we're going to now sit you the last two games? Why take a chance of re-injuring this thing? Let's just get to the end of the season and get you completely healthy for next season.
I think you're dealing with the wrong man. I think you're dealing with the wrong cat. You know, when you get on the airplane, and I remember asking Derek Brooks after we clinched the NFC South after our 15th game, I said, Derek, next week's game means nothing. The seeding means absolutely nothing. Why don't we sit you down? You played a lot of football. He looked at me like he was going to beat me up. These guys want to play. These guys love to play. Their signature, their defining moments are on the grass with their teammates. If Rodgers is good to go, you really think he's going to go there and hold a clipboard and watch Brett Hundley? I doubt it.
Well, let's put you squarely in the Herm Edwards camp, then.
You play to win the game.
There you go.
There you go. So John and Herm are cut from the same cloth. Yeah, there's no question. Good. There's no question about it. All right, so we've hit you with a lot of football questions here, but there was an interesting note in the Monday night game. We saw you sitting together with Guy Fieri, the chef, and making some of those Cuban sandwiches and inhaling them, by the way. How much fun was that for you?
Hey, you got no idea. If you can get Guy to come to ESPN and cook for you guys, he is really some kind of character and a great friend. I've become really good friends with Guy. I got to go down to South Florida yesterday in Havana, and we went and filmed an episode of Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. I got to sit in the 1968 car that he drives around. It was awesome. I got to help cook some Cuban sandwiches, and we just had a blast. He's an upbeat football fan, big Raider fan, and that was a heck of a sandwich. I had a hard time wrapping my mouth around that thing.
Oh, it looked good.
I was about to say Golick was drooling.
Would have loved it.
Oh,
Golick would love. Golick, you would love hanging out with Guy.
Oh, I want to so badly.
You and Guy Fieri, you guys would be. Now you might have to go back to your Notre Dame days when you were really eating. You got all these Slim Fast commercials. Now you're looking too good.
And I would love to be. I love that show, Diners, Drive-Ins, and I love that show. I think it's a great show, and I would have loved to try that sandwich. There's no doubt about that.
Well, look, a sandwich for you this past Monday, and a real big honor for you, John, coming up this next Monday. You're going into the Bucs Ring of Honor in the Monday night game when the Bucs welcome in the Falcons. What does that mean to you, my friend?
Yeah, my dad coached with the Bucs. I've been with this franchise really since 1982. My dad worked for John McKay. My dad drafted Steve Young. He drafted Bo Jackson, although they didn't work out. Some of my best friends are in Tampa and in this organization, so it's going to be humbling, obviously very emotional for me, and I just can't wait to reunite with the Super Bowl champion team and a lot of Buccaneers that I grew up with. And big reason I'm in football and love football is being a coach's son, running around with James Wilder and catching passes from Doug Williams and hanging out with Hugh Green and the guys.
Very cool.
That's great
Very
stuff.
Cool.
James Wilder, running back out of the University of Missouri, if I'm not mistaken.
There you go.
John, congratulations. By the way, I love the fact that we had you talking about Guy Fieri, so you can actually say, I love that guy.
Love that
which
guy.
is the John Gruden. I love that guy. The John Gruden
I love that
catchphrase.
guy.
Absolutely. And, John, we're thrilled for you
Yeah, we are.
for the Hall of Fame. Congratulations. After the season's over, I know we'll get together and talk about the draft, which is going to be a lot of fun. A lot of quarterbacks, John, might go in the first round of this draft, which makes it very interesting.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what Mel Kiper. You know, Mel Kiper, he downgrades everybody, and they'll probably fall into the third round. We got to start getting on Kiper's case. But thanks for the nice words. You
Thanks,
guys have
John.
a great week, and see you soon.
Golick and Wingo, the podcast.
Trey Wingo and Mike Golick Sr. Ramona Shelburne, our senior writer for ESPN.com, was there, and she joins us now on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Ramona, Lonzo led the Lakers playing 40 minutes last night. How important was it to play in the fourth quarter and the OT last night despite the loss?
I mean, it's important for him to step up in situations where the guy who you're hoping can be at least a core player of your franchise, if not the face of your franchise, is supposed to shine, right? I mean, it's Madison Square Garden. If you can't play well there, then you shouldn't be in this game. And I thought it was a good moment for him because I've kind of been there for his first summer league game, his first Staples Center game, and like he's generally tended to have poor games in those big moments, and this is the first time he really had that big game on the big stage.
Well, he certainly did, but they came up a little short. How would you rate Lonzo's season so far? So much talk about him, coming into the draft and how he played really well at times in the summer league. And what do you think where do you think he's sort of leveling off now?
I mean, it's really just the confidence in his shooting. I mean, everything else is there. Like, you watch it, and, like, you ask opponents, too. So I oftentimes will ask veterans in the league, like, especially guys who played against him. So I'd go over to Jimmy Butler, and you go, like, last night, we talked to Michael Beasley, just guys who've been around and who've seen other rookies who've been rookies themselves. And people love him. I mean, like, I remember the one guy who I couldn't believe was just going off about how great he was Boogie Cousins. Like people really like his game because he plays that unselfish, up-tempo style. He makes really quick decisions. He's a great point guard. I mean, he's the kind of guy you want to play with, right? Because he's not really looking for his own shot all the time. The problem is you can't not look for your own shot all the time, right? Especially if you're going to be that big a focal point of the offense. But you see that feel for the game that everybody talked about with him. What we haven't seen yet is a consistent aggressiveness. And if you're not consistently aggressive, the defenses are going to scheme for that. They're just going to sag off you. And if they don't really respect your shot and your ability to make it, then you're going to be Rajon Rondo. And I think it's way, way, way too early to say what kind of player he's going to be in the NBA, but when he came into the league, everything we all thought, which was, he could be Rajon Rondo, he could be Ricky Rubio, he could be Jason Kidd. You've seen flashes of all three of those comps.
Really have, and such a cerebral kid, too, the way he sees the court.
Yeah.
It's really, really fun to watch that, and we'll see where his game goes. He has a long way to go, and we know what comes along with that, Ramona. You're around that a lot more than we are. To me, his dad, LeVar, has become kind of white noise. Nothing affects me on what he says anymore. I just think about the kids and the situations that they're in. But obviously it affected, or it seems to have affected, the Lakers enough to have a meeting with LeVar Ball. LeVar Ball critical of teammates who didn't pass to Lonzo at one point, critical of the coaching as well. And we know he's going to speak his mind. So while it may be white noise to people like Trey and I, and not there so much. So what went on in that meeting, and was there anything agreed to in that meeting?
Yeah, I think, I had heard about this about a week or two, maybe a week and a half ago, kind of right after it happened. And then he and I didn't, I didn't know exactly what it was, right? So I have to go report it out. You have to talk to people and find out exactly what was said and who was there and what the tenor of the meeting was. And so finally last night I was able to get enough of the sourcing there, and then LeVar Ball was there and he was willing to, I said, I'm writing this. What's your side of the story here? And he said, the version I had heard was the Lakers essentially said to him, "Hey man, you got to tone it down when we're talking about the criticism of the coach and other players. We want you to be able to say whatever you want to say. You're a private citizen. We knew what we were doing when we were drafting you. We knew who you were. The Lakers are one of those teams that are sort of they like the drama, right? It's LA. In Hollywood, like, the worst that you can be is boring. So they're fine with all of it as long as you still play well on the court." But when you say negative stuff about your teammates and the coach, it does create a negative atmosphere. And so what they asked him was just keep it positive. And if you have something negative to say, come to us first before you talk to the media. And last night when I asked LeVar about it, he said, yeah, that's about right. That's about right. I mean, don't get it twisted, though. This was a really good thing that they talked to me, and I felt really good about that. And the lines of communication were open, but I'm still going to say what I'm going to say because I've been coaching Lonzo his whole life, and I know what makes my son tick, and I know how to get the best out of him. So I might plant some seeds sometime still. Was anything settled? I don't know. The Lakers, I know, walked away from that meeting feeling like they had a good understanding of LeVar, and he was going to try to be more positive, or he was going to try to at least, think before he says certain types of things. But literally that meeting was 2 weeks ago, and then the next week he went and did a whole other round of interviews. I think that was when he was on CNN and the Today Show, and some of that was with his younger sons who were going to, LiAngelo was pulled out of UCLA. And obviously LaMelo had been pulled out of high school earlier, but some of that was that kind of a tour. But then he went on and criticized Luke Walton again in a serious interview. So it was, how effective that was remains to be seen.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it really took. So we'll see if there have to be another meeting about that going forward. Ramona Shelburne joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, and she has a piece right now, The Greatest Story Ever Trolled, which is a great title, by the way. A deep dive into how Joel Embiid has turned the Sixers' fame process into performance. It's now on ESPN.com, and you can download and listen to the Double Truck podcast on the ESPN app. What can you tell us about the unprecedented access you had to Embiid, and what did you learn from this process, usual word, that you didn't know maybe before you started this piece?
Yeah, well, I went into this like as when you're a writer, there's certain things that people say or do that make you're like, okay, I'm in. I'm interested in this guy. Like, what is this? And for me, last year I caught him in New Orleans at the All-Star game. I remember he made a big campaign to try to get into the game.
Yep.
And didn't get in, but he still showed up, and he was sitting there by himself courtside. And I was like, what are you doing here, man? I want to see it up close. I want to have fun. And I go, what? That's interesting. Like, you still show up, right? Like, wait, are you trolling the league, or you just want to be here to be around it because you want to be here someday? And he's like, look, I'm just trying to have as much fun as I can before everybody turns on me. And it was such a statement. I was like, wow, that was, in a way, it felt kind of dark, right? Like, oh, that's fatalistic, right? But on the other hand, it showed this incredible understanding of the fame cycle. And I thought for a minute, I was like, this is like a 22-year-old kid from Cameroon who didn't speak English 6 years ago, let alone play basketball. And somehow he's like now in the United States trolling on Twitter and having fun. And like, he has a personality like Shaquille O'Neal. And everybody likes this kid, right? Like nobody's even close to turning on him. And he had just like the 31 best games you had seen as a rookie ever, pretty much. And he says something like that, and I was like, how did you understand the fame cycle of like where we build you up and tear you down and then build you back up again after you feel bad? How do you get that? And that was the beginning of the whole thing. I was just like, I want to understand this kid.
Well, I'm curious. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you said that. Why did he give you a reason of why he thought eventually people would turn on him?
Yeah, he said, everybody just so likes something new. He goes, people always are going to prefer somebody new. He goes, it happens to everybody. Steph Curry, and what's Steph ever done? But then people turn on him, and LeBron and Russell Westbrook, and it was kind of like this. It wasn't exactly cynical, right? I mean, it was cynical, and yet it was more of an understanding. And I think the more I spent time with him, that was kind of the jumping off point of our conversation. And we were in a car together for like 2 hours driving from Sacramento driving from San Francisco to Sacramento, where they were going to play a game. And I said, hey, what is that? That was how did you know that? How did you understand that? And the more he talked, the more I could hear it in his voice. Like, it's not like he's afraid of it. He kind of knows it's coming, and it's almost like he's preparing himself for it to be in this world where, like, maybe we don't think he's funny anymore. Maybe he crosses the line. And I was like, is this something that he wants or something that he needs? And I started to think about Embiid and kind of his personality a little bit more, and I go, oh, Like, he needs this. He needs the sound of people, because his teammates would all say, you know, when people chant "trust the process," like, if they don't chant it, he gets upset, right? And they'll start egging the crowd on, and it's like, oh, this guy loves this stuff. He's like an internet troll. Like, he's one of those people on Twitter who will say something at you just to get a rise out of you, and that's what makes him better. And Embiid was like, yeah, when I'm on the road and people are like, Joel, you suck. He's like, I love that. If they don't chant it, I feel like it makes me sleepy.
Big man, a big man with a big personality. You got to love it. I'm with you. Like Shaq, you got to love, because we know a lot of big guys that kind of are a little more introverted. Certainly not Shaq. Certainly not Embiid. It's a great story. We're talking to Ramona Shelburne on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, a 3-time academic All-American at Stanford, playing softball. And I love this. Your mom, Jeanette, was a professional screenwriter for children's TV shows. Very, very cool there. I want you to answer the one question we asked this morning.
Yeah.
Away from Lonzo, away from Joel Embiid.
Yeah.
If you could only have one on your team, would you take Kristaps Porzingis or Ben Simmons?
Oh.
And again, we preface there is no wrong answer.
I'm going to go Simmons. Look, that's a really hard question, but because of how good they both are, and like, I love Porzingis' game, I worry a little bit more about his health long term than I do about Simmons' health long term, and I'm gonna knock on wood really loud as I say that in my hotel room here. But because Simmons is eventually going to learn to shoot. He's not going to shoot left-handed anymore. Like, this offseason, they're going to just make him a right-handed shooter, I think, because it's clear that's what he should be. But his game, he has LeBron James kind of potential. Like, he could be that good, and he's a playmaker. So,
but he's missed an entire season already.
I know. I just am knocking on the wood as we talk, because it's so good. I'm nervous about both of them, but. You know, I think I'm always going to go with the great point guard playmaker over the great big man, because the big man needs the point guard to get him the ball. So that's just always my preference.
All right, Ramona, we appreciate it. Thanks for the insight. And the story is really good. You can check it out on ESPN.com. The greatest story ever trolled.
Love that.
Ramona, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, y'all.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
What a day, what a show, what a time.
I tell you what, a great sports night last night. No doubt about it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey everyone, Mike Golic here. Support for the Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS, consumeraccess.org number 3030.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I'm so happy, I feel like I can fly.
Disclaimer, you will not be able to fly by switching to Geico. This is against the laws of physics and nature. If you find yourself flying, please seek professional and or medical help immediately. In the unlikely event you find yourself flying, you might be a superhero, or a pigeon, or a superhero named Pidgewoman, who was bitten by a radioactive pigeon. If you are indeed Pidgewoman, Geico retains all licensing publishing rights in the event Pidgewoman the movie becomes a top-grossing Hollywood blockbuster.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Joined in the studio every once in a while by the likes of greatness. RG3 joins us in the studio to give us the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. I got to say, you got to be a little intimidated right now. Baylor winner, Heisman Trophy on the right of you, just Baylor grad on the left. But we're here.
Just Baylor grad on the left. Yeah.
Know my place, know my role. Know my place, know my role.
Welcome to you.
Appreciate you guys having me on.
And I like Matt Rule. I know it was a tough year for them, and certainly there's some things to overcome out there. But I do like Matt Rule, and I do think he can get things going there. I want to add, there's no way this fits to you because you are a great athlete already. But as I just said in that sports center, to be something like a Porzingis, I would probably take a LeBron for one day to be able to be 6'8", 260, 270, and do everything that he could do, do anything. I'm trying to think of a person for one day that you would want to be in another sport that you would. I know some people say like Tiger for one tournament in his heyday. to shoot that well.
I would have that feeling in my hands as I hold the club to know I could flight the ball any way I wanted. Sign me
who you would want to be for one day and be that great in a different sport than what you play.
That's a very interesting question.
That's a radio question.
That's a very radio question. I think everybody wants to do something that they're just not very good at. So
Right.
for me, it'd probably be either tennis or soccer. So I'd either want to be Roger Federer or Messi.
See, there you go.
Those are two very good ones.
You know what
very
I mean?
good
So
ones.
Yeah.
I think that's what it comes down to. You want to do what you can't do, and those are two things.
That's exactly
I'm not
right.
very good
Yeah.
at.
That's why they put me on radio. I want to do what I can't do.
Yeah.
Robert Griffin III with us
trying to
here
work past that.
on Golic and Wingo. Okay, unfortunately for you, you're very familiar with what Carson Wentz, the Eagles quarterback, is going through. You suffered an ACL tear at Baylor, and again in 2012 in the wild card game against the Seahawks when the knee gave way after being injured in that hit that Haloti Ngata put on you.
Correct.
So what advice would you give Carson about coming back from this? Because, again, it happened in December. He wants to be ready for week 1. You were all in for week 1 in 2013.
Correct.
What would you tell him about what to expect and what's real and what's not?
He got injured a little bit earlier than I did. What I would tell Carson is do exactly what he said he's going to do. Continue to work hard, come back stronger. He has that belief. He knows why he plays the game. He knows everything that around him is stable. His team is stable. His organization is stable. So I don't think there's a problem with him wanting to be ready for week 1 at all. Just like when I was coming back, I didn't think there was a problem with me wanting to be ready for week 1. But his job is to do everything he possibly can to get his body right. And the coaches and the organization's job is to say, look, we're going to pump the brakes and not bring you back this quick, or say, look, he passed all the tests. The doctors say he's good in 9 months. Let the kid go.
So a couple of things I want to ask on that. First, and I said this to people who would ask, a doctor can tell you you're physically ready to go.
Correct.
How about the mental hurdle?
Yeah.
How is that hurdle of trusting what the doctor said and all the rehab you did to actually go do that on the field?
I think, they say playing the game is 90% mental, so the mental aspect of that is extremely huge. And as a player, nobody can tell you how you feel. You see guys a lot of times pull themselves out of games or put themselves on IR because they just don't feel right. So I think that mental aspect for him is going to be those second reaction plays when he gets back out on the field, those things that aren't planned. In rehab, you can take a 3-step drop and roll to the right and make a throw because you know you're going to do that.
And nobody hitting you.
Nobody hitting you. But when you get on the field and you have a guy like a Haloti Ngata or, for me, DeMarcus Ware, these guys are coming at you, those are things that are not planned. You have to react. And that is where the knee injury really comes in because you can't see your knees.
Right.
You can see your shoulders, your collarbones, and all that, but you can't see your knees, and you got to trust that it's going to be there. I think he'll get there.
So that leads me to the next question. So now you get over the mental hurdle. Now it's the physical aspect of the game again. And forgetting like pocket passers because they're not really leaving the pocket anyway. For guys like yourself, like Wentz that will move when he has to, for quarterbacks that will move, run a Cam Newton, if you get a major injury, is there any thought process to, I have to stop doing some of that? I have to keep doing some of that, somewhere in between? How do you go about that?
I think you cannot do that. For Carson and Deshaun Watson, what they have to realize is their ability to move is what makes them great right now. So use that as long as you can. I'm 27. I can still move around. Those guys are younger than me. They can still move around even after they come back from the injury. So they have to make sure that they continue to utilize that. Over the years, you will develop and you'll become better as a pocket passer. And then you won't have to use your legs as much, but you want to keep that threat. It's what allowed Philly throughout the whole year to use those RPOs, those run-pass options, to make those easy throws, those easy slants with the backers coming up and play-action passing going deep like Deshaun Watson was doing.
So real quick on that, sorry, Trey, real quick,
Trey's not here.
I'm sleeping.
The RPOs or the read options that Wentz would do, should they just not do them? And because there's no threat, Foles is going to keep the ball. So do you have to? Is it become more about just the play calling as opposed to the player?
Obviously there's some things that Nick won't be able to do. That Carson did.
I mean, who's thinking he's pulling the ball and running?
I don't think anybody's ever called Nick Foles a fleet-footed, quick release quarterback, and that's what Carson can do. But there's many ways to skin a cat. So they can keep the RPOs in. There's just not going to be as much quarterback run RPOs.
That's what I meant more of the read option.
It may be handoff or throw as opposed to handoff, throw, or run.
Right.
And I think you can still run those, and they're built. They're built to do this. But, they can also go under center and just hand the ball off to Jay Ajayi and LeGarrette Blount and be fine.
They got 4 running backs, second best rushing attack in the NFL. Robert Griffin III with us on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. Want to talk a little bit about something that was a bright spot for the Cleveland Browns, and that was the return of Josh Gordon, a guy you know well from your time at Baylor.
JG.
He obviously has had a lot to deal with, and he sort of laid it out there in that one interview where, he was dealing with these substances his entire life. He's only 26 years old. What do you think the upside still is for Josh?
I mean, JG is part of the reason that I ended up going to Cleveland. I really believed in Hugh Jackson and Pep Hamilton and the vision that they had. And I know he wanted me to be there this year. I just didn't fit the analytics. But JG is a guy.
The analytics guy isn't there anymore, so don't worry about it.
Hey. JG is a guy that the sky is the limit. I think everybody says that. If you meet him and you knew him while he was at Baylor or anybody that's come in contact with him, he's a great guy. He's not a guy that's, just out there doing bad things. He's made mistakes and he's had problems with addiction. And I think that's a serious issue. It's not something you just push him to the side and say, we're going to give up on you. So I'll never give up on Josh. I think that now that he's back playing, that's the best thing for him.
He went on in great detail, talked about going back to his days in college where he was selling, and then he went in the pros, and maybe even in college, I can't remember, but I definitely remember in the pros he either had a drink or a hit before every game. Were you guys aware of all of that at all that was going on at Baylor?
This is the beauty and the curse of it.
Yeah.
We knew what Josh was going through. We tried to help Josh.
Yeah.
But Josh got to a point now where he wanted to help himself. And that's where I've been most proud of him. Because he'll tell you, I've told him things in the past that he didn't want to hear.
Right.
He just didn't want to hear him. And you know how it is. You send somebody a text message, they don't respond because you're trying to be honest with them and be there for him. And that's why Josh is a brother to me. He'll always be family because, I care about the guy. And I'm excited for him. I'm happy that he's back out on the field playing. And I think that him coming to the realization that what he was doing was going to kill him before it helped him. And now he's making the right steps to get himself back out on the field and ball out.
Let's hope that, he's been getting a few chances. Let's hope, it sticks and he has way more life to live than football. And God knows he's an unbelievable talent on the field. Let's just hope off the field goes well for him as well. As far as your position, the quarterback position, RG3 joining us again, Heisman Trophy winner at Baylor, Pro Bowler 2012, Rookie of the Year in 2012. So coming from college to pros, it obviously worked well for you, that transition.
Right.
How do you look at the quarterbacks now? They're talking about the possibility of maybe 5 in the first round, from bigger guys like the Darnolds and Rosens and Allens to the Baker Mayfields, a little smaller on the smaller size, of how they transition to the NFL and how the NFL helps them transition. Can you take us through where that is now?
I think it all depends on where you land. I think it all depends on what coach you end up with. You look at Carson; they said he needs a big pocket to throw the ball, and Philly put together an offense for him that allowed his talents to be showcased. Baker Mayfield's a shorter guy, but I'm a strong believer in if you have success in the college level, you can be successful in the pros. It's all about getting in the right situation, getting with the right team, and I think whatever teams draft these guys, they got to be sold on them. You can't draft a guy and have half the organization not like him and half the organization love him, especially if you're going to give up picks or draft him high in the first round. But these teams, they'll figure that out. I think when you have split organizations, things, can go downhill extremely fast. But they're all talented players, and I know when they get into the league, they'll be very excited, and it's a dream come true for them.
Golic and Wingo, the podcast.
It was all sort of one big, giant Jell-O mold.
It's very interesting where that went.
You know who's more of our age bracket?
Who's that?
The bread truck.
Yes, he is.
And Charles Barkley, TNT NBA analyst, joins us now. Charles, we appreciate you being with us. We know we've been through a lot in your home state of Alabama over the last 24 hours or so, so we do appreciate you getting up early with us. How are you this morning?
Well, man, I'm just excited. Number one, congratulations on the new show.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And I'm just so proud of the people in Alabama for rising up, and congratulations to Doug Jones.
All right, so that was the big result in the election there. But let's talk about the NBA now and what's going on here, Charles. Paul George returns to Indiana tonight, first time since he left in the offseason. It's going to be on our air. What do you remember most about the first time when you returned to Philly after leaving Philly? Because you were an icon in that city.
Well, I think it's emotional. It's very emotional because you meet some great people I mean, because you kind of, I was in Philly for 8 years. You get to know the fans. They become your friends. I mean, really good friends. But I remember telling my team, the Suns, I said, hey, man, I love y'all. I love being in Phoenix. But if y'all lose this game, I'm going to kill everybody in this locker room after the game. We better beat these guys. That's the last thing I told them before the game. I said, if we lose this game, y'all are not flying back to Phoenix with me.
Oh, I love that. How about the Thunder, that team, with that mixture of players that they have and how they came together, and it's just not happening right now, sitting at 12-14, favored in 25 games and have lost 14 of them. Why is it not working for them in this group right now?
Oh, they don't have a good team. I said 6 weeks ago, they're not going to have a good team because they don't have enough diversity. You have three guys who need the ball, and it's only one basketball out there. You have two other guys who are just standing around. I said from the beginning I didn't think it was going to work. I'm not surprised at all. You go back and look at the tape. I said, they're not going to be very good. Mike, when I got traded to Phoenix, I was so happy to play with Dan Marley and Kevin Johnson, Mark West, and those guys. But, when Kevin or Dan had it going, I was content to get some rebounds. I wasn't a good defender, but I was content getting 17, 18 rebounds. Those guys, they're all just scorers. So they don't bring in a diversity to the table. One can't say, hey, you know what? Russ got it going tonight. I'm going to just get a bunch of rebounds. But they don't do that. They all are scorers. Russ is the man, but those other two guys, they're just primary scorers, and that's it.
Well, so you don't think there's any way they can get this to work? Because I'm sure a lot of fans were really excited about the three of those guys together, but you don't see any way with what these players, those three players like to do, that they can find a way to make it work and become a better team?
No, I don't think it can work at all. I mean, listen, there's only basketball. You got all these fools out of here who believe in analytics. Analytics only work when you have Clay, Steph, and Kevin Durant. That's the only time analytics work. And it works with the Rockets because James is fabulous and, they got a bunch of scores. But you got to have guys who can do different things. And they don't have guys who can do different things. They can all score, but you can't say one guy's a great defender, one guy's a great rebounder. They're just all great scorers, and it's never going to work. So it's going to be a failed experiment in the end.
As far as guys coming back from injury, we talked about Kawhi Leonard, a team that went 19-8. He didn't play in the first 27 games of the year from that ankle injury last year. He played 16 minutes last night in their loss. Talk about coming back from an injury, in this case a lower body injury for a basketball player, and how you do need to bring it along. 16 minutes this first game. How many minutes you think the next game, and when a guy like that can get at full strength?
Well, the toughest thing, Mike, is getting your confidence back, being able to explode. I had a couple knee surgeries, and I was scared to, jump with all my energy. So, Pop is the greatest, he's right up there with Phil Jackson as the greatest coach ever. He's going to manage his minutes. But the number one thing, he just got to get confidence in his body. Because, like I say, a couple times I had knee injuries. I was scared to jump with all my energy because I was like, this thing going to give again. But it will come. It just takes a little time.
We talked a little bit with Charles Barkley about what's happening with Paul George tonight when he goes back to Indiana. And then, of course, Chuck, they go to New York on Saturday, and that'll be Carmelo's first time back there. What do you expect the reaction is going to be when Carmelo goes back to the Garden?
Well, I think it'll be a little bit different because the way the Knicks have disrespected him, it was unbelievable the last year or so. But it's going to be emotional, like I say, because you get to know these fans. When you're in a city for a long, extended period of time, everybody who's on the front row. You play golf with guys all summer, so you develop a lot of close friendships. But I tell you, it's interesting how, everybody keeps telling you who's great players, who's great players, who's the great players. There's only two or three great players. Everybody in the NBA can play. Everybody in the NBA can play. But there's like five great players because you can see how some of these teams are playing better without these quote-unquote great players. Like I say, all these guys are good players, but I get sick and tired of people telling me who's a great player because some of these teams are doing much better without their quote-unquote superstars.
Talking to Charles Barkley, TNT NBA analyst, also, if you all that remember, an All-American center at Auburn, NBA MVP in '93, 11-time NBA All-Star. And one of those great players, without question, would be LeBron James. But in a general question, LeBron is playing extremely well right now for all the miles and he has on his legs and his number of years in the NBA. We've been reading a lot and hearing a lot about Tom Brady and what he's doing at 40 and other quarterbacks that say they feel good enough to play into their 40s. Do you think this will expand to a very physical running sport and physical sport like the NBA, where in today's age where guys and their nutrition and the resting a little more and making the NBA season a little longer, all the things maybe at their disposal, could you see players in the NBA lasting longer than they did?
Well, first of all, Father Time is always going to win in the long run. But, the difference is, Mike, the game is less physical. Has nothing to do with guys taking better care of themselves. Listen, guys have always taken care of themselves. Do these guys have some extra stuff? Yeah, maybe they do. But the reason they can play longer, they've turned the game into a three-point shooting contest, and there's no physicality. That's the reason guys are, playing at a high level. Some of these guys are playing at a high level. There's no physicality in the game anymore. It's becoming a jump shooting contest. LeBron's amazing. I mean, he's one of the 10 greatest players I've ever seen in my life. But the reason these guys play like this now is, like I say, nobody can hit you anymore. You kind of just run up and down the court in a three-point shooting contest. That's the difference. But nobody ever beats Father Time. Father Time is always going to win in the long run.
By the way, it kind of sounds like the NFL defense now. You can't hit anybody anymore.
I knew you were
I had to
that
get it in there. Sorry.
Well, yeah, things have changed in both your sport and his sport, that's for sure. That's why that debate is always interesting when you talk about Michael Jordan's Bulls and the Warriors, and the question is, which rules are you playing by?
Right.
The ones that the Bulls played by and the ones that the Warriors now play by, so you can get all those free threes. Hey, obviously, Charles, LeVar Ball's in the news for a couple of reasons right now, with the Lakers asking him to sort of tone it down a few weeks ago, as Ramona Shelburne reported. And then, of course, he's got the two kids that aren't playing for the Lakers moving over to play pro ball in Lithuania. When you heard that, these are two kids, 16 and 19 years old, what was your reaction?
I just feel sadness. That the media, CNN, ESPN, has given this guy a platform. He represents everything that's bad about sports. It's all about him. I just feel bad for those kids because, everybody talk about he might be a good father, this and that. No, he's not. He's just exploiting his kids. His kids, I love the kid playing for the Lakers. I don't know the other two kids. He's all about big ball of bread. He has no foreseeable talent. He's trying to make money on his kids. And I just feel sadness for those kids because they're going to do whatever he tells them to do. And I just don't like the guy at all, plain and simple. And don't tell me he's a good father. Just because you exploit your kids trying to make money because you have no talent, that does not make you a good father. That makes you exploiting your kids. And I don't like the guy at all, and I wish they would quit putting him on television because he has no talent whatsoever.
The one thing that we talk about whenever we bring that up is, well, hopefully the kids can make something out of it. Lonzo Ball is already, showing some great signs, obviously, in the NBA. So let's talk about it from the basketball side of where they're going. They're going to go play, obviously, overseas, so that means they're not playing the one who's in high school, ain't going back to high school, can't go to college. The college kid can't go back to college. So this is their lot right now. How tough is this road? Certainly we've seen other, obviously, foreign players play European ball and come over and play in the NBA. How tough is this road for basketball players to go through to try and get back to the NBA?
I don't know enough about I do know Lithuania, they got a great basketball heritage. If you go back and look at the 1992 Dream Team that I was fortunate to be part of, they were one of the elite teams that we played. I don't know anything about that league or how it is. But like I say, first of all, I wish there was a place farther away from America they could send him. I don't know where Lithuania is, but if there's another place farther away, I would love to. First of all, I would never leave my kids over there. If he's a legit father, he should stay over there with those kids the entire time. That would prove something to me. You know, people want to say he's a great father. Well, stay over there with those kids. I will never send my 2 teenage kids to Lithuania and then show back up in the United States the next day. I would stay with my kids if I was a good father. But like I say, I just feel bad for those kids. And I'm sick of CNN and ESPN putting this food on television all the time.
Well, just know if you listen to this show, this is one show that isn't going to do that. So you have that for you, Charles.
Yeah, that much we can guarantee you. So we'll move on to what's happened Friday here. Friday, ESPN goes all access with the Philadelphia 76ers, a full day of exclusive coverage across all of our platforms. Doris Burke's going to have a one-on-one with Ben Simmons. Joel Embiid will be live on First Take with Stephen A. They're still missing Markelle Fultz, the top pick from this year. But when you see Embiid and Simmons out there, where is the ceiling for this Sixers team as you see it right now?
What did Michael Jordan say a few years ago?
The ceiling
and
is
everybody
the roof.
made fun of it.
Yeah, the ceiling is the roof.
The ceiling is the roof. They got no ceiling. Those 2 kids, I think they're both tremendous people. I love what the Sixers are doing. I think they got a bad rap the last few years when people said they were tanking. I don't think they were tanking. I think they were just trying to build through the draft, and the 2 best players in the draft just got hurt. I think if you look at it realistically, if Embiid had played or Simmons had played, they would have been 20 games, maybe 30 games better. And I think they got a bad rap of being accused of tanking. And let me tell you something, the Sixers for the next they're not going to win a championship this year or next year, but they're going to be perennial contenders for the next. If both of those kids stay healthy, they're going to be perennial contenders for the next 10 years in about 3 years.
Charles, we put on a poll question at Golick and Wingo on our Twitter page. Who would you rather have right now? Would you rather have Porzingis right now or Ben Simmons right now?
Ooh, man.
We got Charles double clutching. This is good. This is good.
By the way, it's 51. I won't tell you who it's in favor of, but right now the vote is 51-49, so it's that close to everybody. We got a lot of votes.
Hey, let me tell you something. That's one of the best questions ever. Man, you know what? that's kind of like if somebody asks you, do I want Halle Berry or J-Lo? I don't care. I got the second pick in the draft. I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, the vote is 51% Porzingis, 49 Simmons. I would take Simmons. I mean, they're both freaks, but man, the last big point guard we were talking about like that was Magic Johnson. That worked out pretty well, and this kid is just a freak. I would take both of them. I'm with you on that, but man, that's two kids with really bright futures.
You know, the reason I might go for Porzingis because he's a better scorer. I mean, because Simmons is going to have to improve his jump shot and his free throws. I mean, I watched that Hacker Simmons about 2 weeks ago when he shot 24 free throws in one quarter, right, and they turned a 30-point lead into a nail-biter. He's going to have to improve his offense. That's the only difference why I might take Porzingis, but it's very close.
Well, it certainly is, and like to that point, the shooter is usually what you're looking for, and the 3 is more than 2. We've seen how that works out with Golden State. Charles, we appreciate you being with us this morning. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks, Charles.
Hey, guys, keep up the great work, and congratulations on the new show.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Golick and Wingo, the podcast.
Let's not expect too much. There's only one person out there that's expecting way too much out of this guy too early. We know who that is. It's his father.
This time of year, people call it the most wonderful time of the year, right?
Yes, they do.
Yeah. They call it for a variety of reasons. Holidays, New Year, college bowl games, all this kind of stuff. It is my favorite time of the year because we get the first post mock draft from Todd McShay after the regular season, which really means the countdown to the draft is on.
I know how much he loves doing these. Love it. Because we're holding you to this one of your 6 mock drafts that
probably
you probably
be the
have.
best one.
We're going to hold you to this one the most.
Well, Todd and I talk about this all the time. The mock drafts now, if you just did a draft right now as opposed to the draft that comes in April, how different they would be, right?
They're going to be different.
Yeah.
They will be significantly different. And, first of all, it's team needs with free agency. Guys are going to change teams, and all of a sudden, if you need a tackle, you go get one free agency, and you need a different position. So that's part of it. And then right or wrong. First of all, I have a lot of tape to still catch up on. NFL teams are still going through that process as well. And then the scary part, though, is when you start really looking at the All-Star games, and much more so with the combine and the individual workouts. That's when I think a lot of mistakes are made. Or, it's not like the old days. It's not, we don't have the Mike Mamulas necessarily anymore. But I think the last thing you're focusing on for a couple months is the numbers, the workouts, and the private stuff compared to just the football. And sometimes that leads you astray with your evaluation.
So let's look at this. We have the rest of the half hour or two after Todd leaves to go through more of this first round. But let's look at the quarterbacks. So in your first 5 picks, you have 3 quarterbacks going. Number 1 to the Browns, you have Sam Darnold. Number 2 to the Giants, you have Josh Rosen, UCLA. Number 3 to the Colts, you have the pass rusher Bradley Chubb from North Carolina State. Number 4 to the 49ers, their DB Minkah Fitzpatrick from Alabama. And number 5 to the Broncos, Josh Allen, the quarterback from Wyoming. You do have a 4th quarterback going in the first round. Number 19 to the Chargers, that would be Baker Mayfield of Oklahoma. First and foremost, I would ask, what are the percentages you think, and I know it's purely a guess here, that Sam Darnold actually decides to go back to school?
I would guess maybe 70-30 that he's going to leave at this point, and 30 is a pretty high percentage considering he just has a tough decision to make. I mean, let's just be honest. If he goes back to school, I think it will benefit him for the long term. I think he'll have an offensive line that will be better than this year, where they lost 3 guys to the NFL from their starting group last year and had 3 more injuries. Against UCLA, in the Pac-12 championship game, they're on their 3rd right guard.
Right.
So he started to lose trust in his protection, started to see some ghosts, feel some ghosts in the pocket, and I think his footwork regressed this year as a result. He still can be the Sam Darnold that we've seen, that we saw last year, and we saw a little bit more of towards the end of the season this year. His receivers were really young, and they got and they developed as the season went on, and the rapport got better. So he started to play good football the second half. The last 5 games, if you look at it, I think it's like 9-2 touchdown interception ratio, 64% completion. So he's playing better, but I think he'll be in better shape to succeed in the NFL if he goes back to school for another year. But
so was Trubisky, and he still went because the money was
How do you turn down $20+ million?
Well, listen, Michael Vick wasn't ready to come to the NFL, but you're not getting higher than the number 1 pick, so you're going to go.
So it'll be interesting to see if he leaves, then it's not nearly as deep a class as we think. But right now, you get Darnold, Josh Rosen, who I think is the most polished quarterback of the group.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
I think he is the best thrower of the group.
Yeah, I think it's okay. And you know what? If it wasn't clear, the apples to apples comparison, that USC UCLA game really it stood out to me, just watching how much more polished he was in the pocket, going through progressions and making NFL type throws compared to Darnold, who seems to really be at his best when he's extending and has the chaos.
Okay. You answer that. I was going to ask that about I think the same thing about Rosen as far as that throwing ability.
You mentioned 3 in the top 5. The 4th quarterback you have going in the first round is Baker Mayfield, the Heisman winner out of Oklahoma. Look, if you have him going 19 to the Chargers, and I'll just be honest with you, from a draft perspective, if that's where Baker Mayfield goes, the first night's going to be epic, because you want that guy that everyone has questions about, especially at a quarterback, to maybe go towards the back end of the first round. Adam Schefter has gone on and said he believes that Baker's going to go a lot higher than people think. David Pollack thinks he should be the first quarterback taken. What do you think are the comparable quarterbacks to Baker Mayfield that he might be at the next level?
I think probably the best comparison to me, and I'm not saying it's identical,
right?
But I think Russell Wilson is close. I think it's Russell Wilson maybe with a little on the field Johnny Manziel to his game, where he thrives in the chaos. But Russell Wilson's kind of the same. I think he's a little bit more developed as a passer and a little bit twitchier, but I think a lot of the similar characteristics, and just studying the tape, I think Russell Wilson's an adequate comparison. Obviously, when you look at Baker, he's around 6 foot. He's a little bit taller, but still not size is not at his advantage.
But he's thick like Russell.
He is. He's thick and strong, and he's done a good job protecting himself. He's been durable. He has I think he's going to end his career 45, 46 starts, which if you go back and study it, it seems like the simplest thing in the world, but there is a correlation between college experience and future NFL success at the quarterback position. So Baker, I'll be honest with you. When I started the process in the summer, watched the tape, I gave him a day 2 grade. And that's a quarterback to me. That's okay. It's going to be a great backup. Maybe he can develop into a starter, but we're not counting on it and investing that much money. This year, he has improved so much with his accuracy. His arm seems stronger. Maybe it's just seeing him live. He has more juice on his throws than I remember or thought watching off of tape. And, I know that he had those incidents, and I know there's some immaturity questions that need to be answered. But when you see him live, his ability to just galvanize the team, the energy he brings, he's got something special in terms of the intangibles.
He certainly does, but you and I know, having done this long enough, there are going to be two sort of measurables that will determine just how high he goes besides the arm strength and everything else. One's going to be the speed. Is he going to have the same speed close to Russell in the 40 time? Because Russell is elusive because he's a little faster than people think. So I will be curious to see exactly what Baker's 40 time is going to be because of the way he plays. And the other thing that not many people talk about, but is going to be a huge thing, is hand size. Do we know what his hand size is yet?
I don't think we have it.
Because that's going to be a big deal for a guy that's undersized.
It didn't show. I've seen. I think it's in the 9.3 range. I think it's adequate. I think it's solid.
Because that's going to be a concern.
I've already got Mort texting me this morning about one of the other quarterbacks' hand sizes and thinking that I'm heading down the wrong path with it.
Now explain to people why that's such a big bugaboo for talent evaluators in the NFL. Hand size for a quarterback.
Well, it's first of all gripping a ball in the rain and different situations like that, and also there's a high correlation between guys with smaller hands and ball security, just protecting the football and being able to, pump fakes, different things like that. But when you're carrying the ball and you don't have a chance to get two hands on it and defenders are wrapping you up and going to bat the ball away, guys with the bigger hands are typically the ones who do a better job protecting it.
It's Golic and Wingo, ESPN Radio, ESPN2. We're talking with Todd McShay, just released his first mock draft. You can check it out now on ESPN.com. The fourth quarterback one we haven't talked about, you have him going number 5 to the Broncos. They're going to try again with a first-rounder. Josh Allen from Wyoming, who is just a specimen.
He is.
Firing that ball and his size in the pocket. And he struggled at times this year, depleted receiver core. I know all that, but he's also the least quarterback anybody has seen of not of people who are breaking this down, but of the general public,
right?
Because of being at Wyoming.
The only two times people nationally saw him were Oregon and Iowa, where they didn't play well.
So does he get a bump from the fact that, look what Carson Wentz, look the school he came from, North Dakota State, and look at how well he's doing, big strapping quarterback. Maybe Allen can do the same thing.
He's, to me, the most interesting of all of these quarterbacks because he has the best physical tools.
Oh, yeah.
God just doesn't make many guys with his frame, his arm, and his mobility.
Unreal.
He makes throws where you say, whoa. You just don't see a lot of that out there. But he makes decisions where you say, whoa. You cannot get away with this. Well, so mentally, he's not nearly as advanced as Carson Wentz was coming out of school. And I think that's the difference. Same coaching staff, same system. Certainly Allen has improved and matured. He's competitive. He's tough, just like Wentz is. But I think that's the difference. Whereas Allen's has better physical tools. Wentz, I think, was mentally more, he just picked things up quicker and had a better grasp of football intelligence or knowledge.
And if you're a Broncos fan, the best news is he's 6'5", he's not 6'7".
Yeah.
Because Brock Osweiler and Paxton Lynch, we laugh, but that makes a huge difference in your ability to move and set and get your feet right.
The release.
Players that tall, just 6'7" doesn't seem to work in the NFL.
Very few.
And there's one other one real quickly. I know we got to go. Mason Rudolph, how close was he to being in the top 5? I mean, being a first-round quarterback?
I think he'll go in the second round. Yeah. And Lamar Jackson's another one who's going to – it's just a really difficult evaluation because he does things from an athletic standpoint that most guys can't do, but can he hold up physically? Can he continue to develop as a pocket passer? Those are the two really intriguing players because they have special qualities, but there's some development that needs to occur with both of them. And I think second round is probably fair with those, but this is a really deep group. Right. I mean, you can go down the line and some other quarterbacks that maybe don't have big names, but this is a really deep group of quarterbacks and one of the better top-to-bottom groups we've seen in a while.
This has been the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast. Make sure to subscribe on the ESPN app, Apple Podcasts, and to listen every weekday morning at 6 Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPN2, and the ESPN app.